Sorry for the wait. I came down with Peggle fever last week. A few months back, I was presented with a curious opportunity. Techland, developers of Dying Light 2, reached out to me and asked me to make an ad for their game. They gave me full creative control. I could do anything I wanted. I already liked Dying Light 2, and they were holding out a big suitcase, glowing with the allure of gold and precious gems held within. Obviously, I wasn't going to just take the money and run. I'd want to, make something with it. But I've never made something with an actual budget before, and Techland's deadline was tight. The prospect of taking a risk this huge was obviously exciting, but also hellish. I couldn't just make a video honestly talking about the game because the game was paying me. I didn't even know what the video would be, just that it couldn't be like anything I've done before. I remember telling animator friends about the scope of the project and the tight deadline, and the response was often just, do you think you can, can you do this? So I signed the contract, and with no plan, no budget, and less than 2 months before the deadline, I started brainstorming ideas for the first fully animated short I had ever made. Okay, the budget thing was a lie. I could never have done this without proper funding, which I did get. Eventually. Techland made it very clear, though, that they were only sending cash after the video comes out. My agency promised me a big doubloon to get the video made, which they did not have to do, thank you, Mana. Trouble is, moving around big money takes big time and big effort, and involves multiple big people. Basically, I was starting with nothing but hypothetical money, and so from the moment I hired my first artist, I was actively losing real money. Do you know about the horrific experiment done to the rats where they get randomly shocked, but one of them has control over their fate and the other has none at all, and the one with no control was found to be more likely to develop significant health problems? Anyway, after a day of brainstorming and getting nowhere, I bounced some ideas off a friend of mine and immediately came up with the YouTuber in the apocalypse idea we went with. I quickly realized that this was never going to get done in time if I didn't surround myself by people with similar worms of mind, and so I scooped up Ed, Eli, Sam, Brendan, and DJ Sprite into a server, assuring them all a cut of the promised plunder, and began ballin' spit. At first, things went well. We tried to imagine what kinds of videos this guy would make in this setting, and ended up with so many ideas that we thought we could make a whole-ass, fully-fledged anthology. Retrospectively, we were like Icarus. Except, instead of flying close to any particular sun, we were just stupid. Ideas included Noodle beating a person he thought was infected, an undead film crew referred to as the Interns, Noodle having his own Tyler Durden, except they were a rival YouTuber who went by Bean Girl. I don't remember why. I think it had something to do with her reviewing cans of beans. Don't fuck off! We'll be right back with more How to Make a Pipe Bomb. Hey man, what's the problem?
I haven't watched the movie on the moon!
Hey, it's alright. We can tell Tubi that we're anywhere on Earth with private internet access VPN. Through the power of modern technology, PIA masks your true IP, allowing you to appear to Adobe as if you were in Colombia instead of the US. Not for any particular reason. No reason. We love Adobe. Private internet access never stores user data or keeps records, as proven multiple times in court and via third-party audit.
Cool.
Use it on your phone, and your computer, and your laptop, and your Linux, and your smart fridge with the Wi-Fi.
All at once.
You will find PIA awesome and cool. But in case you instead find it bad and lame, worry not, for they also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Wow.
Order now.
Visit PIAVPN.com/noodle and learn why PIA has racked up over 30 million downloads. Click now for $2.03 per month and 4 months for free. Click now. Now!
We're back with more Gonial Angles here on Goon TV. We had so many ideas we liked. We had too many ideas we liked. it started to become a challenge to figure out which directions we even wanted to go in. And the more directions we considered, the longer the video started to look. And the longer the video was, the more it cost to make. How long will this thing be? Is it just goofy? Does it have a moral? If there is a message, what's the message? How long will this thing be? Do we need to write supporting characters? What would they look like? Who would voice them? When is my paycheck coming in? How long will this thing be? When is my paycheck coming in? The worst thing is that even when we could agree on which prompts were worth exploring, a lot of them just ended up as dead ends anyway. As the days went by, we started to realize that titles like Why My Stummy Hurts Sad Face might be funny, but there's just not much of a story there. We do not have time to be hung up on this. How is it that we have so many fun ideas, and yet so few of them are going anywhere? Fuck! I guess let's just focus some more on the mall idea. At least that one has some legs. Follow that line of thought 5 or so more times, and you can see how the solution came about. Completely naturally, entirely by accident. We ended up with so many ideas centering around the mall scenario that at some point I was just like, I think mall is video. And it do. And it do perfect. Once that pivotal decision was made, everything else started to fall into place. Within 10 days, off and on, we had gone from a loose collection of ideas to a pretty solid outline. And so from that point onward, it was up to me to storyboard the whole thing. Which I had never done before. I could have hired someone to help me, but at this point I already had a pretty clear vision of what I wanted. I had the shots planned out, I knew the camera angles I wanted, I knew the pacing, the line delivery, and handing all that off to someone else just didn't feel right. Also, I had no money, so with a month and some change before the deadline, I did it all myself with a mix of 2D and 3D, which is apparently pretty normal in the industry, but I don't know. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty damn proud of how it came out. I did not animate that part. The idea was to slowly ramp up the tension leading up to the chase sequence at the end, where it becomes more action than comedy. You might have noticed the framing got more and more cinematic the higher I raised the tension. I used a lot of shaky cam, Bolivian angles, and do-fast perspective to ramp things up. Hopefully the transition to genuine thriller type shit was surprising in a good way. It's what I was going for. The whole thing took about a week or two. Definitely longer than I was hoping it'd take. It's hard to remember exactly how long, because at least a bit of that time was spent trying to figure out why my Adobe Flash files were getting corrupted and losing me hours of work. A very normal part of the creative process I really enjoyed, especially because once I fixed it, it never happened again. Aside from that though, I was also starting to hire freelancers while finishing up the boards. Onboarding was pretty straightforward. I'd send a test file or two to the artists and tell them what I need from them. I'd pay them for their time, out of pocket. I had not been paid. And if the quality of work was where I needed it, they were in. And once they were in, I had to learn how to be their boss. Which is something I've done before, but the tried and true approach of chill guy, have fun with it, do what you want, smile, probably wasn't gonna work here. I had to actually give notes and feedback and coordinate people and enforce deadlines. Like a boss. And that sucked. That meant telling background artists that they have to redraw parts of their work because despite how good it looks, it doesn't quite fit the style. That meant telling an animator whose Adobe software deleted his work on a scene twice in a row that his third attempt, while not lost, is missing some crucial details and needs to be revised a fourth time. As an example, aside from the mild to moderate stress of management, the fear of failure, the lack of funding, the constant technical issues, the carpal tunnel, the lack of funding, and the looming deadline, and the lack of funding, there was also the problem of art direction. I was so busy that I didn't have time to make any concept art, and so when our first background artist Laszlo came on board and asked for directions, I basically just had to pick one and go. I scooped up a metric pound of reference from games and movies, sent it all to Laz, and told him to use it as a base, but also use their best judgment, perchance. Their judgment is amazing, it turns out. A big part of directing, I think, is knowing when to let talented people go silly on it, steering them in the right direction as they go. Through communicating with Laz on my ideas and goals, the choices on color and line art they landed on informed almost every other decision made throughout production, even the character design. From then on, that was the strat. If you weren't sure about something, check to see if anyone else on the team has done something similar. If they have, that's your reference. God, these backgrounds fuck so hard! The team murdered that shit. Allegedly. First degree. Homicide. Suspect not in custody. Lock your door. With less than a month to go and production picking up momentum, I also had to worry about audio. Thankfully, David, Ubisoft ex-intern, pungent French-Canadian, zombie voice actor, and gay audio editor for the video, is a friend of mine who shares a lot of my personal taste sonically. And so he already kinda knew what I wanted. It's very helpful to have someone who knows what you mean when you say obtuse garbage like, "This sound lacks weight and is gay. Make it sound heavy and gayer." We're both very glad that people noticed how much went into the audio. And so I will be giving to David 16 Siberian dinar that I found in my local mall's water fountain for all his hard work. One thing I was really worried about leading up to all this was the Goodwill scene, because once doo-doo hits the fan, we have to have an alarm blaring for almost a minute straight. It had to be anxiety-inducing without being grating. How do you do that? I remembered how in games like Metroid, they blurred the lines between music and sound effects with their alarm. And I wondered if we couldn't do something similar. Eli dug up a security sound we liked, suggested borrowing the vibe of BFG Division, and that was all our composer Astro needed. So fucking good. From then on, it was all just tweaking things based on what was happening on screen, same as the other tracks. I'm gonna do that. I'm still kind of blown away at how well they strode the line between drama and camp. As for the animation, there isn't really that much interesting to say about it, if I'm honest. This is the problem with animators. We don't lead very interesting lives. You sit down, plan out a shot, and then bury yourself in it for a few hours until your software tells you to eat shit. Wash, rinse, shit, repeat until you get a finished product. With the only exception being that time I went out to do movements in real for reference and got the cops called on me for throwing large objects in a vacant parking lot at 10 p.m. Like, yeah, if you really, really care about how the sausage is made, I could go into detail. But for everyone else, that sort of thing just isn't that interesting. The most I can really say here is that a lot of the animators were kind of new to limited animation, and so a lot of the feedback I gave would just boil down to them removing frames to make things feel choppier. Always fun, telling talented people to delete their work. And then not paying them. Multiply this cool interaction between myself and an artist by all the people I ended up hiring, the amount of shots in the video, add the background art and audio stuff onto that, bearing in mind that this was a month-long process. And you can begin to imagine how the process of trial and error, feedback and revision, hair loss, head-meeting brick wall problem solving can exacerbate existing stressors. I am balding. As the days turned to weeks, more and more animators were brought in to get this thing out on time. By the time the project kicked into high gear, there were nearly 20 people working on it in some way. I still hadn't been paid by this point. I nearly went bankrupt waiting for that check to clear. It got to a point where a day or two before the funds came in, I was just staring at my screen like, either I get that money now, or the video doesn't get made. And the $8,000 I've spent so far just... It was around this time that my mental state became very neuronormal. One day I'd wake up and be like, I can't believe I get to work with so many talented people. I love my job. This video's gonna fuck so hard. Go to bed, wake up the next day, I'd be thinking, none of this is funny. Why did I sign up for this? No one's gonna like it. It's gonna bomb. I have no money. I'm gonna be bombed. I have no bitches. Adobe fucking deleted someone's work again. Can we talk? Yeah, fuck it. This video's about Adobe now. We're gonna talk about Adobe. This video's true suffering did not come from leadership or budget or deadlines or budget or the crunch I pulled with David at the end that had us screaming about Imagine Dragons to cope with the misery or anything like that. This production's true shit was in serving its sentence to death by 1,000 Adobe branded cuts. If you or someone you know makes digital art of any kind, you'll likely have some idea of Adobe's reputation. I often get asked in the comments, on Twitter, even on email what software I use to make videos, and I've always been hesitant to answer that question. Because truth be told, as someone who's been legally paying for and constantly using Adobe's software suite for over 10 years now, most of the tools I use are Hitler. Using Adobe products is a matter of RNG. Sometimes it works as it should, other times it doesn't work at all. Usually it's somewhere in between. I am not exaggerating. I do not have one friend, one acquaintance who uses Adobe products and likes using Adobe products. Not just animators, editors, colorists, VFX artists, painters, illustrators, graphic designers, developers, photographers, audio engineers, circus organizers. If it's something Adobe has a solution for, I guarantee you it is one of the worst options you could pick. Because, yeah, it'll get the job done, but it will fight you every single step of the way, pissing and shitting as you drag it by its hair across the finish line. And never did this become more clear to me than when almost my entire team of animators began to report personalized errors and issues I'd never even heard of. It wasn't just me. Shoot couldn't open the canvas at full size. Owen's program would freeze constantly to save a recovery file that wasn't even there when Flash broke and he ended up needing it. I had essential files flagged as malware for no reason. Joma would send me files that worked fine on his PC, but completely froze my computer if I scrolled across the timeline. David is getting married next year. I am so happy for him. Laz's background included a symbol that disintegrated if you touched it. I had an essential part of my workflow streamlined out of viability by Adobe with no warning. I had to finish Villa's work for them because their software lagged so much that they couldn't draw lines properly. Most of our computers would freeze up or crash when we tried to export a fucking GIF. Do you know about the horrific experiment done to the rats where they get shocked randomly, but one of them has control over their fate and the other has none at all, and the one with no control was found to be more likely to develop significant health problems? Oh, well, if it's that bad, why do you still use it? Because everyone else does! Because Adobe has such a stranglehold on the market that they don't need to make products that are reliable in order to compete. Because Adobe knows how dependent we all are on their products, even when they don't function. Because if I want to collaborate with others, I am forced to continue using software that is more likely to add a slew of new bugs with every major update than it is to fix ones that have been around for longer than I have. Thankfully, that is changing. Anime productions will often use Clip Studio, and the West has gotten very attached to Harmony, both of which are great. From what I've heard, I plan to find out for myself very soon. I wish I could say this was enough to loosen Adobe's grip on creativity, but I know better, and so do they. With big industries leading away from their software because it doesn't function, it suddenly makes a whole lot of sense to put so much marketing into young talent just finding their creative voice. You know, lock them into your ecosystem, so by the time they realize how bad things truly are, they're in too deep to leave. I'd like to say that there's always room for improvement. I'd like to see them get their shit together. But considering that Flash was fine until Adobe bought it, I don't trust them to improve. And considering how predatory their business practices have become, I'm no longer interested in sticking around to find out. Obviously, if you work as a programmer in Adobe or something, you're very limited in what you can do about issues so deep-rooted, and so I don't blame you for any of this. But as a fucking Fortune 500 company, I have lost all faith. I hope it fails. I want to see it happen. And I want the people responsible for where we are now to know that it was people like me who legally purchased their software who hated them the most. If you're just getting into digital art, please, it doesn't matter what software you use, as long as it is not what I use. Trust me.